Okay, so we've already recognized that our solution isn't in first normal form because of the presence of multiple names in the PI field. And so here is one approach that we could take to changing our database design, and no claims that this is optimal. But our issue is that we have multiple names in the PI column. And so first off, let's create a list of names that represent individuals instead of a string of multiple co-principal investigators. And so looking at our data, we see that sometimes we have this contact string thrown in with a name, and that also that the names are separated by semicolons. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do list comprehension, where I'm going to create lists of names instead of these strings of names. And I'm going to do that by first off replacing contact with an empty string. I'm going to then split the string on semicolons, and then for each one of those resulting names from the split, I'm going to strip leading and trailing white spaces, and as long as that's not an empty string, then I'm going to keep it, and I'll have this new list of names. So that's going to result in about 57,000 names, and then I'm going to use a set to get the unique names, and you see I'm going to end up with about 4,700, 4,800, 48,000 unique names. And so let's just see what this looks like if we look at the first, say, 10 or so names. Oop, not scriptable, so I can then make this into a list of names, subscript that, and if I get my parentheses right, I need an extra, let's see, what have I done wrong here? All right, there we go. So I've got J. Donald Easton, Neelam Azad, etc. So this looks more like the kind of strings we'd want to be dealing with names. Okay, so let's drop the table project that we defined previously because we're going to redesign it in terms of what goes into it. And so now here's the new query for creating it. So I'm going to have a title, I'm going to have an organization, department, and a total cost. And then I'm going to have foreign keys to the department and organization represent foreign keys. And I don't have the PIs in here. So let me recreate that table. I don't need to delete my PI table, drop it, because the schema is the same. I have a name and a unique identifier. But I do want to delete all my entries that I've put into it because I'm going to repopulate it with this list of unique names that we generated up here. Okay, so now let's repopulate that database with these unique names where we've done the replacing and splitting and stripping. And we're going to create a new table, which I'm calling investigators, which connects PIs with particular projects. And so now I'm going to have it's going to consist of two columns, a project and an investigator, and each one of these is an integer, because this is going to be a foreign key pointing to the project row ID for that particular project and the row ID for that particular investigator. And just as I went through this multiple times, if I've already inserted something, I'm going to delete that. Okay, so now we need to populate our tables. So again, we're going to iterate through the data frame. But now, in addition to grabbing the foreign keys for organization and department, for every one of the PIs, we have to repeat, for every row, again, what we're going to have for our PI names is going to be that original string of semicolon separated names with potentially with a contact thrown in there. So we need to repeat the process that we did before to get our list of unique names. And then for this grant, we're going to use this list comprehension, and this is going to give us the list of PIs corresponding to the names that we have in our PI table for this particular grant. And then for every one of those, we are going to iterate, loop through them with a for loop. We need to get the row ID for that person, and then insert that into our investigators table along with the unique identifier I have for this particular project. Now, the way that I got that is SQLite has a last insert row ID command. So this query right here, so the last thing I inserted was into the project table, the values for this particular project. And so this query right here is going to return back what the row ID that was generated for this insertion. And then I have that. So then for every one of my investigators, every one of my PIs on this grant, I'm going to insert into investigators the row ID for the project and the row ID for that person. So let's run this. And for time purposes, I'm only going to take the first, let's do a little more than 50, let's do 100 of them. That's a lot faster. And now again, if we want to get back at our data, we need to do some joins. And so in this case, I'm going to get our project title, the total cost, the organization name, the department name, and the investigator. And to do this, I need to query from investigators, and then I need to join on the project, join on the PI, join on the organization, and join on the department. And that didn't work. So let me figure out what's wrong there. Well, the problem I had was in my pandas sort, so let's not worry about that at this point. Here's our resulting result of our query. And so you see that we have our project title, the total cost, the organization, and then we have an individual, a single individual, in this case, Christopher Hernandez and John Ashford, both attached to the same project, but we no longer have multiple entries within a column, and so we've got this data into our first normal form we were looking for.